Well, now I can see why you are the way you are, because I don't like this feeling.
Believe me, I've seen a lot of this at this point, and this one is even surprising to me, and that's saying something.
Vegas Golden Knights lose 3-2 to the Calgary Flames. Let's talk about it. Golden Knights saddle up for their first real, true test in the early on in this regular season, in the form of the Calgary Flames on the road, playing in the Saddle Dome, going with basically the exact same line they've gone with the whole year, same line combinations up and down the order. Only difference from their dominating win in Seattle being that Logan Thompson is between the pipes, facing off against Jacob Markstrom. Now, the Golden Knights got off to a really pretty great start, honestly, all things being equal. Early on in the game, the fourth line was buzzing. They started off the game pretty solidly. Good first shift, and then it kind of snowballed from there until ultimately William Carrier would break the seal on this game, putting the Golden Knights up 1-0 on what has to be one of the saddest goals I have seen given up this regular season. Now, remember getting on Martin Jones last game in Seattle about how he's, somewhat technically sound and gives up kind of some weird goals from time to time. But the first goal that Jacob Markstrom gave up in this game was one of those where even I could have saved that, and I haven't played goalie in the better part of a decade. The technically sound Jacob Markstrom. It was basically just a float pass from behind the zone. Zach Whitecloud took a clearing attempt in the neutral zone, and instead of just chipping it in, decided to feed it to William Carrier, who just kind of fired it at the net like, you do when you're trying to score. And I don't know whether Markstrom lost it in the light or lost it coming through a red jersey. Either way, it went off his glove and ultimately in the net. So Carrier from Whitecloud at 3:55 of the first period breaks the seal for the Golden Knights and has everybody feeling pretty good. And then wasn't too much longer after that, the Knights laid on even more pressure, this time with the first line coming out and almost cashing in on a very pretty passing play between Kessel and Eichel, who were pretty dominant pretty early on in the game. That being said, it wasn't without its mistakes. Logan Thompson had to make his first really big save, despite it being, his fifth save of the game at that point, on a breakaway. It was a decent shot, but Thompson was just locked in. And then Then Theodore decided to pull a Theodore, make a really, really, really egregiously bad turnover in the defensive zone. And thank goodness we have a really good goalie, because Theo would have gotten benched pretty much immediately after this, in the form of Logan Thompson sliding across and making an absolutely ludicrous glove save on Tyler Toffoli. This was about halfway through the first period. And it wasn't overly too long, only a few minutes after this ludicrous glove save by Logan Thompson, that the Golden Knights would add to their lead in the form of Brett Howden tipping in a Braden McNabb point shot at 15:23 of the first period. Now, this was another really pretty goal by the Golden Knights in that it really just was the epitome of what the first period looked like. We were outworking them and making smarter decisions in the offensive zone. Whether it be Stone feeding the puck up to McNabb at the point, or Howden beating his defender to the middle of the ice and tipping it down below the glove of Jacob Markstrom and ultimately into the net. So Howden, assisted from McNabb and Stone at 15:23, puts the Golden Knights up 2-0. And then pretty shortly after, tensions kind of boil over, and Milan Lucic takes a pretty dumb hooking penalty at 17:33. He argued it, but it was a hook, so it was a hook. That being the Golden Knights' second power play of the game, as Michael Stone took a penalty at 10:05 of the first period, but we weren't really able to do anything on it aside from just maintain some pretty solid zone time. So looking to build on this second power play, the first wave was pretty solid, not really mustering much in terms of shots, but they looked overly solid in every other facet of the game. The second wave spent the entire time, their entire about minute and 10 seconds of their time on the ice, in the offensive zone, making stuff happen. A few good chances, a couple of really solid shots. Pretty shortly after the power play ended, there's not a lot of time left, and a couple of really crazy bounces gave Calgary a really good opportunity to try and cut the lead in half before the end of the first period. Fortunately, they weren't able to land a shot as it was just so late that everybody was rushing, and I think it was Sean Monahan just completely whiffed on what probably would have been a goal if he had connected with it. So that being said, the horn sounds in the Saddle Dome. The Golden Knights are up 2-0, and it's been a really, really good start. We jumped over them early. We've been kind of class of the field in terms of pacing the game, and everything has looked pretty solid, aggressive, or arguably. There was a little bit of a lull in the middle of the period, but we were bailed out by good goaltending, as we have been a lot of times this season. And on the stat sheet, things were looking a little bit questionable. We were being outshot 12-10. We were 55% from the dot, which is helpful. 4 blocks. We were being out hit 7-6. But the kicker is we had 3 power play shots, which is not a bad thing when you only have 2 power plays and only about a minute of them was actually beneficial. So now, it's time to talk about the second period. Now, the second period has been pretty good to the Golden Knights this year, accounting for 1 goal against LA, 3 goals against Seattle, and the only goal against Chicago. So we've basically been class of the field in the second period, not being scored on at all and only scoring. And it seemed in the early stages that this is exactly how the period would go, as Keegan Colasar, who I will now redub 7-Eleven after his heroics in the last game in Seattle, had a wide open net, and he missed it. So yeah, that's not the ideal start. One would think, good, great chance, but again, great chance, wrong guy. Colasar, I love you, buddy, but you just got to hit the net next time. Make the goalie make a save. You know, you're a good player. Make the goalie make the save. And then the period would start to take a little bit of a turn as Zach Whitecloud would get caught for a roughing penalty at 2:08. It was not needed. The puck was going the other way, and it was a retaliation penalty. Obviously, Whitecloud was getting a face wash, and he returned the favor, and as is so often the case, the official caught only the second infraction and not the first one. Nonetheless, the Golden Knights go to their first penalty kill of the game and first of the period. The Flames had one really good chance on a bouncing puck, but that was really it. And so they managed to get out of the power play, and now they can start. The Golden Knights can start building some forward momentum. That wasn't until Alec Martinez took another tripping penalty at 4:25, and it was literally right as the first penalty ended. So there really wasn't a whole lot of break. And wouldn't you know it, penalty trouble comes back to bite the Golden Knights in this case. When you give one of the strongest power play units last year in the NHL, I know they lost Gaudreau and Tkachuk, but they replaced them with really good players in the form of Huberdeau and Weegar. Obviously, when you give them power plays back-to-back and you keep your penalty killers out there for essentially 4 consecutive minutes, you're going to get scored on. And that's exactly what happened with when Elias Lindholm crashed the net and took advantage of a rebound off Logan Thompson, fired at home. I guess you can only make so many saves with chaos in front of the net without getting tackled. And, you know, crazy bounces come back to bite. Now, that's what we all thought until the replay kept playing 1,000 times, and everybody who knows anything about hockey knows exactly what's about to happen. And ultimately what happened is the Golden Knights challenged it for goalie interference, and on watchback, yeah, Nazem Kadri kind of was on top of Logan Thompson, so he wasn't able to come back to make the save. Situation room took a look at it, and ultimately the goal was waved off. So we went from 2-1 to back to 2-0, or back to a 2-0 lead. So that's a positive. And then oddly enough, after that overturned goal, the Golden Knights actually took a little bit of momentum out of it and actually recorded the best chance on the power play for the Calgary Flames, with Riley Smith having a shorthanded breakaway that he just happened to miss a little bit high and right. And then there was a good chance for Nick Waugh at the end of the penalty kill as well, getting a little bit behind the defense, but ultimately Markstrom was able to come up with the save. What followed was about 2 minutes of really good play by the Golden Knights, and then it kind of changed again when Calgary started dominating the middle portion of this period, about the 7-minute mark until about the 10-minute mark, when William Carrier took a interference penalty at 10:08. And now 3 penalties in the span of 10 minutes is already entirely too many penalties. And having just barely dodged a bullet in the second penalty kill of this period with the goal getting waved off, obviously there's a little bit of concern that we may not be able to hold the fort forever, and that is exactly what happened on this case, as Elias Lindholm would actually score and have a count this time. That's because Alec Martinez scored the goal. It was a weird point shot that was just kind of fluttering in, and it hit Logan Thompson in a weird spot, kicking straight up in the air, and in a sea of sticks swatting around at it, Martinez just happened to bat it down behind Logan Thompson and in the back of the net. So that was a little bit unfortunate. There's really nothing you can do. I can't blame Thompson on that one. He made the initial save, and he was looking really solid at that point. And ultimately, it was just some fluke bounces that wound up resulting Calgary's way and cutting the Golden Knights lead in half by making the score 2-1. So ultimately, the stat line of that one reading Lindholm unassisted at 10:43. And now one would think, okay, it's okay. We gave up a goal, but let's just keep the discipline, not put ourselves behind a man again, and try and build out, try and get that third goal, reestablish a 2-goal lead. Clearly, nobody told Braden McNabb that as he took a tripping penalty at 11:53. It's a parade to the penalty box at this point. It's honestly kind of getting laughable. And Calgary has a lot of momentum at this point. They've got 3 consecutive power plays. They've scored twice, but only had one of them count, and their first power play was just as effective. And ultimately, this parade to the box would wind up biting the Golden Knights for a second consecutive time, as Tyler Toffoli would tie the game at 13-19. Now, this was another one where there's absolutely no way you can blame Logan Thompson, as a point shot hit Zach Whitecloud up high. I thought it hit him in the face, but it looked like it hit him in the upper body, and it stunned him, somehow magically kicking the puck over to Tyler Toffoli on the left wing, where Logan Thompson was sold out to the initial shot. It was just a crazy bounce that managed to find a Calgary stick right on the tape. Wrong guy, wrong place for the Golden Knights, and ultimately, that's how the game gets tied up. So ultimately, they've scored 2 goals on 2 consecutive power plays. At this point in the period, they are outshooting the Golden Knights 13-5. 10 of those 13 shots have come on the man advantage. Now, that's just frustrating at this point. What's even more frustrating is the fact that the parade to the box doesn't end there, as William Karlsson takes a cross-checking penalty at 14:51. That is the 5th penalty on the Golden Knights this period. Fortunately for the Golden Knights, this was probably Calgary's worst power play of the period, as they weren't really able to do a lot, and by that point, I think our penalty killers had figured out what their offensive strategy was, and so we just adjusted, and ultimately they weren't really able to land any shots. Now, that might be the very end of our power play woes and our penalty trouble for the period. That wasn't until Whitecloud decided to go back to the box, getting caught for tripping at 18:08 for the 6th penalty of the period. Oh my goodness. It's my job to be pessimistic, and I'm even impressed at this amount of disciplinary ineptitude. Fortunately for the Golden Knights, this 6th penalty kill of the period wasn't met by a lot of resistance from the Calgary power play, probably because, they've been on the ice forever this period, and so they probably were running out of legs, and they probably needed a break. Ultimately, the horn sounded. There's still a few seconds left on the power play to carry over into the third. The Calgary Flames spent almost 10 combined minutes on the power play that period. I think the figure was like 9 minutes 43. And to little surprise, 6 penalties in a single period is a Golden Knights single period franchise record. We've set a lot of history this year, getting off to a 3-0 start for the 3rd time ever and winning our first 2 road games for the 7th time ever and scoring the 2nd fastest goal to open up a game in Golden Knights history 3 days ago in Seattle. That being said, this is not a record that makes anyone very happy. 6 penalties is ridiculous, and against the unit as potent as the Calgary Flames power play with names like Lindholm, Kadri, and Huberdeau, that's almost inexcusable, especially when you call yourself an elite hockey team. Now, the only reason that this game is still even remotely close at this point is because Logan Thompson has been playing out of his mind. Alec Martinez has blocked about 30 million shots, and our entire defensive forward core has basically had to earn their game check and then some just to have any semblance of hope of remaining competitive. And to do all of this on the road is even more detrimental to my own opinions on the discipline of this team. We had hardly taken any penalties over the course of the season so far. Through 3 games, we had barely been shorthanded. This recalls back to that one preseason game where we took like 9 penalties. And you guys remember how livid I was at 9 penalties over the span of a game in the preseason. But this is the regular season against a team who is likely to be our division rival when we're trying to go on and win the Pacific, and we're probably going to have to play them in the playoffs if we get to the playoffs. 6 penalties is inexcusable, especially with the amount of talent we have on the back end, the amount of discipline and smart players we have in the lineup throughout the entire roster. This is just ridiculous. And it is a miracle. Somebody's got to buy Logan Thompson a drink, or 37, for the amount of work he did in that second period just to keep the Golden Knights with a semblance of a chance of winning this hockey game. Fortunately, there is still a 3rd period to play. And while the hope of, a positive outcome is kind of dwindling, pursuing to the fact that we spent half the previous period on the penalty kill, there's still 20 minutes. You've still got to play those 20 minutes. And on any given night, anything can happen. And it seems that the refs were trying to kind of make up for the penalty discrepancy, which was like 6-2 at this point, when they called Tyler Toffoli for a hook at 2:04. The first wave of the power play was a little bit all over the place. Not a lot of shots, but a couple of decent attempts. This is probably because some of the offensive players basically didn't play at all in the second period, so they probably were taking their first shift in a hot minute. There was a time early on in this third period where I saw Paul Cotter for, I think, the first time since the first period. Like, that's how bad the penalty situation was for the Golden Knights in that second period. It completely threw off the flow of their lineup. The second wave of that power play was equally as bad and even surrendered a really dangerous shorthanded chance by Blake Coleman that resulted in Logan Thompson, again, having to bail out the team in front of him. And then following that power play, we just hit a wall where there were basically no scoring chances. The Golden Knights were stuck in the neutral zone, not really being able to shift out of first gear and recover from what was a disastrous second period. They got another gift in the form of Nikita Zadorov taking a hooking penalty at 11:13. It was a really just another all-over-the-place power play. Not a great start with a shorthanded fast break caused by a failure to hold the blue line and then the defender getting beat. And then there was a good chance in the first wave, but it was wasted by just entirely too many passes. We were trying to pass the puck into the back of the net again. The offensive structure of this third period reminded me a lot of the way the Knights played against Chicago in the home opener, where they were trying to pass the puck into the back of the net, and nobody got it through into their system that they realized, hey, the only way to score is to shoot. We don't have to try and pass it, give a wide open net. Our first goal of the game came off the goaltender's glove when he wasn't even really being screened. So maybe making life difficult isn't the way to go. The best opportunity for the Golden Knights to do anything in this third period came off the stick of Riley Smith on that power play when he hit the outside of the post from the low slot. Hearing the puck off the steel ping is always good, but it didn't go in, so it still remained 2-2. And it really almost wasn't 2-2 for much longer, because pretty shortly after the Golden Knights ended their power play, the Calgary Flames get some sustained zone time, and Logan Thompson has to, again, bail out the team in front of him by making an absolutely mind-boggling save on Nazem Kadri. Now, Thompson has made some incredible saves this year, whether it be the cross-crease feed save that he made in the home opener against Chicago that ultimately wound up preserving the shutout, or the incredible save moving from his left to right that he made on Toffoli in the first period. And now this one, another save where he made moving from his left to his right on an elite player in Nazem Kadri. He's doing everything he can to keep the Golden Knights in this game. That being said, unfortunately, the dam has to break eventually. Logan Thompson has played probably one of the best games of his career, and it's going to wind up going all for naught as Mikael Backlund puts the Calgary Flames ahead 3-2. The team just got completely outworked on this case, and this one, especially if I'm Bruce Cassidy, is completely inexcusable for the type of hockey he wants the Golden Knights to be playing this season. It was all about puck pursuit, all about rebound management, and all about the need and the drive to follow the play to its conclusion. What seemed as like a harmless point shot that wound up going high and wide over the net wound up being the whole reason the Calgary Flames were able to score this goal, as two Golden Knights defenders apparently just took the wrong route to get to this puck and then let Calgary crash down onto the net, hack and whack away. And what tends to happen is the puck seems to find the right person at the right time. And it just happened to kick out to Mikael Backlund, who had basically the entire net to shoot at. While Logan Thompson did a good job to get over and try and cover off as much of the net as he could, you can't cover all the net when you're already down in the butterfly and you've got to cover even more net, having just had to make a couple of saves in the previous seconds. So ultimately, Backlund scores his second goal of the season from Coleman and Weegar at 15:31. And this really was kind of curtains for the Golden Knights in this case. They pulled Thompson with 1:40 to go, but were never really able to do anything with the extra attacker. There was a moment where the Calgary Flames actually had about 40 seconds of sustained offensive zone time when Alex Pietrangelo was playing goalie. We had a couple of decent opportunities in the offensive zone, but again, we weren't able to register a single shot. And ultimately, the final horn sounds, and the Calgary Flames hand the Golden Knights their first loss of the 2022-23 season by a final score of 3-2. Now, I feel really bad for Logan Thompson in this game. He played exceptionally well. He tied the career high in shots faced, and I'm fairly certain he set his career record for saves in a game. And He had a shutout streak, almost crest 100 minutes early on in this game, starting from somewhere in the third period against the LA Kings and continuing until the Elias Lindholm goal on the power play in the second period. He looked really solid, and he played really, really well. And as I've said so many times in this video, he was the only reason the Golden Knights were able to stay in this game for as long as they did. If you're Bruce Cassidy, I don't know where you go from here. Like, sure, you're 3-1, but you let this game get away. You had the Calgary Flames, the team you're supposed to be fighting for first place in the Pacific Division, on the ropes early. Markstrom gives up a really shaky goal to start the game, and then you guys score a really good goal to go up 2, and you go into the first intermission with all the momentum, all the control, and really all the want to win this game. Starting 4-0 is huge. First place in the Pacific, best team in the West. All that's riding on your second period. And you come out, and not only do you lay an egg, you lay an egg so badly that you take 6 penalties. You set a franchise record for penalties taken in a single period, after starting off the period by almost putting the game out of reach by going up 3-0. If Keegan Kolesar finds the back of the net at the start of the second, I think the outcome of this game is drastically different, because I highly doubt that the Flames are going to be pushing as hard as they did to make it 3-1 as opposed to 2-1. And I highly doubt the Golden Knights take as many penalties as they do if they're sitting on a 3-goal lead as opposed to a 2-goal lead. Which is the other thing I don't understand. If you know that your goalie is on fire tonight, and while it wasn't abundantly clear in the first period, especially after those first 2 power plays, it should have been obvious that Logan Thompson was on a heater tonight, and he was playing out of his mind great hockey like he has been all season. And to do that in front of him, make him work so much harder, take your skill players off the ice for almost an entire period, throw off the flow of your game, screw up your line combinations, and basically jackknife all of your opportunities by overpassing and ultimately being down a man for a third of the game, that's not elite. That's not even pedestrian. And for a team that has Stanley Cup aspirations, that hurts for this early on in the season. Yeah, I don't know what to think other than Bruce Cassidy better knock some heads and get everything squared away, because the Winnipeg Jets are a real team. They're coming into town, coming into the Fortress on Thursday. They're a good team while they've got off to a bit of a shaky start. And the Golden Knights want to believe that they're an elite team, and you've got to have good records against ultimately your division, but that's not off to a great start with a loss to the Flames, and ultimately your conference, as the wild card race might get a little interesting. And while I still believe that the Golden Knights will win the Pacific Division and not have to worry about the wild card, and this loss will only be one of a handful that happened this early season, you've got to be able to rebound. And so the game against the Winnipeg Jets on Thursday, honestly, is probably the most important game of the regular season to this point. Home opener is important, season opener is important, but how do you respond to, for all intents and purposes, blowing a very winnable game and doing it in the fashion that you did? That being said, if you like this video, be sure to, do all the things, hit all the buttons, like, subscribe, tell all your friends, share the clips of me having a meltdown on Twitter. I don't care. I appreciate you guys watching. I'm going to be sure to catch you guys up on the happenings of the Winnipeg Jets versus Vegas Golden Knights on Thursday. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one.